Welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons. I am the Chicken Whisperer, otherwise known as Rabbi Lamed Ben Clifford, otherwise known as Baba Lon. Speaking of Baba, I know dreams don't mean anything to anyone else. I'm sorry, I'm not a big dream interpreter person because dreams are very, very private, personal things. And unless I believe only the dreamer can interpret the dreams. Okay, so I do get quite a few communications where people say, last night I dreamed that, what does that mean? I don't know what the hell that means, because in my vocabulary of images and symbols is totally different than yours. My past, my impressions burned into my subconscious are totally different than yours. Don't even bother, okay? But last night I had an incredibly vivid dream of that baboon Egyptian god, Babi, who is also called Baba, okay? And it was a beautiful, beautiful, heavy statue, about 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet tall, and it's in that crouched position and things like that. And it was like clear green jade. You could look right down into it. And so I got up and started looking at Wikipedia at first to see what it meant, but I guess I just interpreted that it was trying to tell me, well, you're getting old and you're an old fool, and are afraid of primates. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, we have been on what I think is a fun tour of a 1981 Oye magazine. This is Haru Raha Lodges, our lodge down in Newport Beach at the for many, many years, 40 some years. And this is our quarterly journal. And we were reading from an essay called Senior in My Bedroom by David Wilson, who was our finest, most excellent scryer, and a very active member of the lodge for a great many years. He was a talented artist. Speaking of Saturday morning cartoons, he illustrated. Let's see, this is Great Figures in Occult History, Eliphas Goldman. Anyway, he was probably he was the most talented clairvoyant, clairaudient scryer that I've ever had the privilege to work with. And actually, his growing up, he knew that he was sort of spiritually sensitive and things like that. But things didn't really start to click with him magically in an organized, focused way until our first experimental things at Monday Night Magic class, which is Thursday at the time, with the Enochian system. and he was our first volunteer scryer when we tried to, in our first effort, contact Ladrum, the Mars Senior, off the Earth tablet. Now, if you'll just look, let's see, where is it? Yeah. If you look right there, you'll see it says MORDIAL. M-O-R-D-I-A-L. Okay, those are the first letters of the three gods of the board, Mor, Dial, Hectica. But if you start at that L right there that I'm pointing at and read it this way, it spells the name of a planetary senior. This one is of Mars. So, and its name is Ladrum. And that's who we thought we would contact first. And as if you've been watching for the last 2 days, it was quite a dramatic contact we made, and it got David on a lifelong, a too short lifelong magical quest and career. I only read about a little over half, I guess, of his essay, but I'd like to continue and finish off what he had to say back in 1981 about his magical launching of his magical psychic scrying career. David was also very enamored with the Goetic and Solomonic formula. He would have just loved to have been born in the 1780s in the French satanic cults of the court of Louis, you know. But anyway, let's see where okay. This is David speaking. We called Ladrum again, this time prepared to ask in detailed questions as to his nature and function, and he responded readily, this time appearing as a whirlwind on a mountaintop. And for more than an hour he responded to questioning with detailed visual images, even answering some personal questions. When the session was finally ended, we were pleased with the considerable amount of information we had obtained. But I was very tired from the experience and went home to bed. At the end of the communication, I had made several personal requests to the spirit. And apparently Ladrum was inclined to answer, proper ceremony or not. In other words, he had made formal contact and allowed the spirit to continue on call, if you will. Because that night I had one of the most intense dream experiences of my life. I found myself in a beautiful mountainous area, like the one in the vision. Okay, and remember that was like the one in the vision. Let's see. Only far more real. I was there, not just looking at a picture through my mind's eye. It was the difference between looking at a photo of Kilimanjaro in National Geographic and standing at the foot of the real article. I'll get that out of your eyes, but I need to read. Okay. I was standing at the base of the largest mountain in the area, and above it, reflecting on the snow at the peak, hung a huge, whirling, shifting mass that looked like a cross between bluish light and cumulus cloud. It had a weird, other dimensional effect, like some of the visuals at the end of Kubrick's 2001. When I saw this phenomenon, I knew that this was the real direct manifestation of the being that I had until then seen only through my mind's eye. And with this realization, I was plucked up bodily and lifted slowly to the top of the mountain. This was not at all a dream-like experience. I can still feel the vertigo just thinking about it. I was set down gently on the snowy summit and lay there looking up at the thing above me. It seemed like it was very close, but that was mainly because of its great size. It looked to be the size of Delaware. And I can't even describe the sensation of being in the presence of an intelligence so much bigger than I was that I felt the size of a flea in comparison. But it was completely friendly. I had the feeling of almost being bathed in goodwill. After laying there, stunned for a while, I got the urge to walk to the edge of the summit opposite the one I had come up on and look down. There, on various points of the descending mountainside, I saw, like a series of theatrical vignettes, various physical events that I had asked about during the evening's ceremony. Then I woke up. I had gone to bed after 3 that morning and had to awaken at 7 in order to go to work. Yet I awoke before the alarm and felt like I had been shot full of B12. I had an almost overpowering feeling of energy and well-being that, believe me, I'm not accustomed to feeling at 7 a.m. This feeling lasted for the rest of the day. And as of this writing, some of the more important events which I asked the Spirit about and which appeared in my dream have begun to come true in physical reality. The second occurrence to make me sit up and take notice happened on Christmas night. Christmas is probably my least favorite time of year, and not only because of its many religious, of its array, not because of its smarmy religious atmosphere, but also because of the scads of crazed people one has to deal with at any retail store. Not to mention listening to Perry Como singing Let It Snow in the Muzak while watching the palm trees wave through the plate glass. Excuse me. I was tired, depressed, bored, and horny. I decided on my own I would try to experiment in contacting the Venus senior of the Earth Square for a rather low but at time important purpose of getting myself laid that night. The attempt was, in a weird fashion, a success, but not quite in the way that I intended. I performed the call and waited for a response. What I got was the image of a big emerald hanging suspended in the middle of a cavern festooned with smaller green crystals. It was Venus. Pretty right on. I ask various standard questions about its nature and the area of influence, receiving a series of visual scenes in reply, and then made my request. Satisfied, I closed the contact and proceeded to some tarot divination that I had planned to do that night. Now, I've worked with tarot cards for almost 10 years, and if I say so, am very good at it, with, according to people that I've read for, and my own experience, a reasonable rate of predictive success. But nothing worked right that night in a way that I find difficult to describe. The cards wouldn't perform, not even badly, and my pendulum refused to do anything but contradict itself. David used the pendulum too, quite effectively, except on this occasion, I guess. So I gave it up as a bad job and went out. Come hours later, I came back alone. The entire evening had been a complete dud on every level, and my body and mind were in, and this is faded out on, in a very twisted state of frustration. I was beginning to think that after all, one shouldn't practice magic on Christmas. In weariness and disgust, I went to bed, sometime in the wee hours. It must have been around 3 or 4. I woke up flat on my back. There was a strange, because normally I can't sleep on my back, only on my stomach or side. My first thought, irrationally enough, was, I wonder if I can leave my body. I'm not adroit in astral projection, having only 3 experiences that I consider to be out-of-body experiences that I can remember. I began very slowly to sit straight up in a fully prone position on my back. When I was about halfway up, I felt that I had encountered a barrier of muslin. Halfway up, I felt like I had encountered, it is faded out, muslin mosquito netting that I literally had to tear through with my hands. Having done this, I threw my feet over the side of the bed and stood up. Looking around, I distinctly saw myself asleep on the bed. I'd like to emphasize that this was none of the active imagination bullshit that writers like Francis King used to explain away astral projection. I had all the physical sensations of standing in the middle of the room, with only a slight feeling of disorientation occurring when the experience was over. In spite of the darkness, I could see most of the details of the room I was in, which, aside from my double laying on the bed, was the greatest sensory evidence of being in an abnormal state. On looking at the wall farthest from me, I was startled to see what looked like a stereo speaker 8 feet high, or perhaps a slab of basalt cut for a very eccentric tombstone. I can't afford 8-foot stereo speakers, so my initial reaction was, not surprisingly, that something was very wrong in my room. I stood mesmerized by this thing for a little while, and then came a period of confusion when I couldn't figure out exactly what was happening, and the black slab somehow resolved itself into an equally large humanoid figure who was rather thin and had a greenish tinge discernible in spite of the fact that I could see the wall through it. Either it walked closer to me or I to it, I'm not sure which. And after a period of some sort of strange communion between the two of us, it, and this is a psychic first for me, molested me sexually. I remember the feeling of being whirled about, of disorientation, and then the next thing I knew, I was awake in the morning light and reaching over to turn off the alarm. He drew a little illustration of the stereo speaker basalt slab that turned into, I guess, his Venus Enochian spirit. Anyway, that's his essay, A Senior in My Bedroom. That wasn't Laidrum. Okay, that was right off the bat. I can't recall the Venus senior's name. Oye magazine, at the time, we always liked to print hard to get or rare kind of Crowley material, just small things. And one of the small things was Crowley's Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Cyril Gray is a nom de plume of Crowley, one of the main characters in Moonchild. Okay, and if you're familiar with the text of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them, you might be interested in this. And I believe that Sunday school tomorrow, I'll be sharing Crowley's Emerald Tablet of Hermes, and perhaps hold it up vis-a-vis other translations or interpretations that you might be familiar with. Until then, that's Saturday Morning Cartoons. It's raining off and on here in Sacramento, so I'm going to try to stay dry while I bundle up and work all day on my book. Which, when you get on a roll, you get on a roll. I think I worked pretty much 7 straight hours on it yesterday, and I slept like a log. Anyway. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.